Welcome back to AR Tales. In today's story, we explore what happens when a man's fiancée tries to lock her ex into their future with a contract and an ultimatum. As you listen, notice the exact moment where you think he should have walked away. My girlfriend said, "Mason stays or we end." I replied, "Then I walked out." Then I left our engagement dinner, closed our accounts, called my lawyer, and watched as her family's modern relationship business plans started to collapse around them. 3 days ago, at our engagement dinner, my girlfriend looked me in the eye and said, "This is non-negotiable. Mason has been in my life longer than you have. He stays or we end this here." So I called my lawyer. I am 33, a civil engineer in Austin, and until that night I thought I knew the woman I was going to marry. Turns out I did not know her at all. We were at Jeffrey's downtown with both our families. 12 people at one long table, everyone dressed up, talking about venues, food, who was flying in. My parents were getting along with hers. Her dad, Greg, is a retired attorney. Her mom, Elaine, is a marriage therapist who writes a blog about evolved relationships. They are both polished and very proud of their progressive parenting. Halfway through dinner, Sloan slid a glossy packet across the table toward me. Color-coded tabs, professional binding, heavy paper. The title on the front read, "Family of Choice Agreement." At first I thought it was a joke, then I realized nobody was laughing. The whole table went quiet. Sloan watched my face like she was waiting for a test result. Elaine was smiling. Greg nodded like he had drafted the thing himself. I opened it. Inside were clauses about her ex-boyfriend Mason remaining a permanent family member after we got married. He would be invited to every holiday, every birthday, every major life event. There was even a section listing him as creative advisor for our wedding brand campaign. Our wedding brand campaign. I did not even know we had a brand. Mason was sitting there too. He is this soft-spoken photographer who talks about emotional architecture and sustainable love frameworks. The kind of guy who acts like he invented modern love. While I read, he sat at the far end of the table, nodding along like a professor watching a student presentation. The restaurant felt suddenly smaller. My parents looked like they had seen a ghost. Sloane's mom was beaming. Her dad's face said this was all very reasonable. Then Sloan looked directly at me and said in a calm, practiced voice, "Mason has been in my life longer than you have. He is family. This is non-negotiable. He stays or we end this here." Everyone stared at me. This was not a conversation. This was a public ultimatum. I folded the packet, placed it carefully beside my plate, and said, "Understood." Then I stood up, thanked everyone for dinner, and walked out. No yelling, no scene. Just a full stop. Sometimes the quietest reaction is the loudest boundary you can set. On the drive home, I kept replaying it in my head. I wanted to believe I had misunderstood. But no. She had handed me a contract at our engagement dinner in front of both families, requiring me to accept her ex as a permanent part of our future. When someone hands you paperwork about your future children at dinner, they are not planning a marriage, they are planning a merger. When I got home, I scanned the entire packet and forwarded it to my friend Tessa, a corporate lawyer. Subject line, "You are going to want to read this." She called me 6 minutes later. Her first words were, "We are documenting everything from this moment on." That night, I went through every shared account. I revoked Sloane's access to my credit card, removed her from the wedding registry account, and changed all the passwords on my condo utilities and Wi-Fi. Then I forwarded the packet to my parents with one sentence. "I am done pretending she respects me." The next morning, I woke up to an email from Greg. Subject line, "Addendum to prenup draft." Inside was a legal document listing Mason as a godparent advisor for all future family branding and child-raising decisions. There were paragraphs about co-curating public image and aligned narrative for future children. Family branding for kids we did not even have. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes, then called Tessa. "All I can think is, it is not love anymore," I said. "It is strategy." This was the first moment I knew I was not just dealing with bad boundaries. I was dealing with a business plan wearing a wedding dress. While all this was happening, Sloane was blowing up my phone. First came paragraphs about how I embarrassed her in front of her family. Then accusations that I was being controlling and regressive. Her mom put up a blog post about partners who fear your freedom, and we both knew exactly who she meant. I did not answer. Sometimes not replying is the only way to stop playing a game you never agreed to. That is when Tessa started digging. She found out that Elaine was the sole signer on every single wedding vendor contract. Every one. The venue, catering, flowers, music, decor, all of it. Total commitment value, about $145,000. Mason's photography company had already been paid $8,500 for creative direction on our wedding visuals. Our wedding that might never happen. The good news for me was simple. I had zero legal liability. Every contract traced back to Elaine. According to Tessa, they had set this up like a business event, not a marriage celebration. Next came the credit card review. Before I revoked Sloane's access, Tessa had me pull statements. We found about $6,200 in charges that broke our written agreement about wedding expenses only. Spa weekends, designer dress rentals, and something called a wedding mood board studio session billed by Mason directly to my card. Meanwhile, Mason sent a message to a mutual friend that Rachel later forwarded to me. "I am not trying to steal her back," he wrote. "I am trying to protect what we built. Some connections transcend romantic labels." He really thought he was the wise one in all this. We disputed the charges with the bank. They froze the card during the investigation. Sloane's text shifted quickly from soft apologies to anger when she realized the money was gone. Then everything spilled into public life. Elaine published that blog post painting me as a controlling fiancé who could not handle evolved love. She did not use my name, but everyone who knew us knew who she meant. Friends sent screenshots. The next day, my company's HR department got an anonymous email questioning my emotional stability and fitness for leadership. Miguel, a friend in IT, tracked the email. The IP address led straight back to Elaine's therapy office. HR called me in. I laid everything out. The ultimatum contract, the prenup addendum with Mason's name in it, the blog post, a brief timeline. They investigated and quietly dismissed the complaint. One manager actually told me they appreciated how calmly I was handling a messy personal situation. This is the point where a lot of people would have snapped. Instead, Tessa kept going. A few days later, Rachel, Sloane's college roommate who still did styling work for her, reached out to me privately. She sent screenshots of a text thread between Sloane, Elaine, and Mason from the week before our engagement dinner. Messages where they discussed staging the conversation about boundaries so that if I pushed back, they could frame me as conservative and controlling. They were planning the scene. "We will present the agreement at dinner when both families are there," one text said. "If he reacts badly, it proves he is not ready for evolved partnership." When I showed Tessa, she smiled in a way that was all business. "Premeditation," she said. "Keep this safe. We will use it if we have to." That was the moment I fully understood. I was never just Sloane's fiancé. I was a character in their marketing idea. Earlier, I had wondered if I was overreacting. Now it was clear I had not reacted strongly enough. Then Elaine threatened to sue me for emotional distress over my public walkout. Tessa just shook her head when I told her. "Let her send whatever she wants," she said. "She has already written your defense for you. It should have ended there, but it did not." Greg scheduled what he called a neutral family meeting at a community center downtown. Both families came. Tessa sat beside me. I thought we would calmly end the engagement. I was wrong. Sloane started by offering what she called a compromise. Mason would step back from family holidays, but he still needed to retain creative authority over her public image as part of our family brand. She said this like it was a huge concession. At this point, what would you have done in my place? I did not argue with her wording. Instead, I turned down the lights and connected a projector. Tessa and I had prepared. We showed everyone the texts Rachel had given us, proving they planned the engagement dinner stunt. We showed invoices linking wedding funds to Mason's company. We showed bank statements with unauthorized charges. We showed the prenup addendum that listed Mason as a godparent advisor. Greg, the calm, retired attorney, snapped. He raised his voice and said, "The Whitakers will not tolerate defamation." "Defamation requires falsehood," Tessa replied quietly. "We have documents." Elaine started to cry. She said they were trying to create a new model for love, trying to expand family beyond traditional boundaries, trying to show the world what chosen family could look like. She said I was destroying something beautiful because I was afraid of their evolution. This is where a lot of people get confused. They hear big words and forget to look at basic respect. The meeting ended with no agreement. Both families left angry. I honestly thought that was as bad as it would get. Then Rachel reached out again. She had found a pitch deck on Mason's computer. The title was "The Modern Family Brand, Turning Love into Legacy." It was a full business plan for monetizing my marriage to Sloane. Slides projected revenue from sponsorships, weekend retreats, and a future book about evolved relationships. They mapped out content series where I would be presented as the traditional partner learning to embrace their expanded love philosophy. They even had mock podcast episode titles built around our story. My wedding was supposed to be their product launch. Mason and Elaine had been building this for months, probably before Sloane and I even got engaged. I was never just a fiancé. I was a brand character, a case study, a narrative arc they could sell. Tessa read the deck and laid out my options. "We can expose this publicly," she said, "turn it into a viral story and scorch their reputations. Or we stay quiet, finish the disputes, and let their own choices catch up to them. Either way, you are safe. The question is what kind of ending you want for yourself." I chose quiet. As tempting as public revenge sounded, I told her, "I do not want my life to become their marketing plan, even as a scandal. Let the truth work on them privately." Consequences still came. Sloane lost 2 major brand partnerships. Most of her sponsors stayed because follower counts still matter more than ethics in that world, but you could feel the shift. Her comments filled with questions she could not answer directly. Mason's studio lost 2 big clients after someone shared parts of his co-parenting brand pitch. People started to wonder if hiring him meant signing up to be a case study. Elaine's blog was flooded with comments from people half joking, half serious, asking when they should invite their exes to Christmas. 3 weeks after the family meeting, the Whitakers' attorney sent a draft lawsuit accusing me of public humiliation and breach of emotional contract. Yes, emotional contract. Tessa responded with a cease and desist and a warning about anti-slap laws. She attached our full timeline. The dinner stunt, the blog post, the HR email, the credit card misuse, the pitch deck, every piece of it. "Do not blink," she texted me that night. The end game is not theirs. The draft lawsuit quietly disappeared. From there, it moved into the final phase, mediation. 3 hours in a plain conference room. Both families, 2 lawyers, 1 mediator. Greg tried again to paint me as an unstable partner who could not handle evolved love concepts. Elaine kept referring to Mason as family infrastructure, as if he were a structural beam in a house rather than her daughter's ex. Then Tessa slid the pitch deck across the table. When the mediator read the title, the room went silent. You could almost see Greg realize his daughter had planned to monetize her marriage. Elaine stopped talking about evolution and started talking about misunderstandings. The settlement took 2 weeks to finalize. I agreed to drop my dispute on 2 borderline charges that were not worth the fight. In exchange, Greg and Elaine accepted full financial responsibility for all wedding contracts and signed a binding non-disparagement clause. Sloane signed a no-contact agreement. Mason signed a cease and desist that barred him from using my name, image, or our story in any of his work. Everything was sealed. No more public posts, no more blog hints, no more anonymous emails to HR. The fallout was real but not cinematic. Sloan tried to rebrand as a relationship coach. She lost her book deal and several sponsors. She still posts, but the likes and comments are a shadow of what they used to be. Elaine shut down her blog, saying she needed a personal break. Her ethics board had received complaints about mixing therapy practice with family promotion. Greg went quiet. His dream of being the lawyer who helped modernize family law through his daughter's relationship ended in that conference room. Mason moved to Denver and started rebuilding. Some people actually like his honest talk about non-traditional relationships. It bothers me a little that he is not completely ruined, but Tessa reminded me that perfect justice is not real life. Real life just gives you enough truth to move on. I did my best to move forward. My HR department quietly praised me for how I handled what they called a deeply complex personal situation. The infrastructure project I had been leading, an affordable housing development called East Side Infill, won an urban innovation grant. I bought a small house with reclaimed wood siding and planted native oaks in the yard. I started sleeping through the night again. There is something calming about building structures that will still be standing long after this kind of drama is forgotten. At a community volunteer build last month, I met Harper, an environmental architect from Dallas. We talked about storm water drainage and green building materials over coffee. No big spark, no drama, just ease. Two people who both care about foundations more than facades. 1 year after that engagement dinner, I attended the ribbon cutting for a new community playground I helped design. Kids were running around. Sunlight hit the slide. A volunteer handed me a wrench to tighten a bolt, and my phone buzzed with an email from the bank. Case closed. No impact to credit rating. I wiped sweat from my forehead and went back to work. A local journalist asked if I wanted to be in the photo for the paper. I smiled and said, "I am fine staying behind the camera this time." Public ultimatums only work on people who are afraid to lose you. I stopped being afraid. The most valuable thing Tessa told me was this: never negotiate with someone who does not respect your right to say no. That has changed how I approach everything. Work, friends, dating, family. Here are the lessons I took from all of this. Lesson 1. If someone needs contracts and staged ultimatums to protect their bond with an ex, they are not building a partnership. They are building a system where you are a prop. Lesson 2. Big words like evolution and freedom do not matter if basic respect is missing. Healthy relationships do not require you to ignore your own discomfort to prove you are modern. Lesson 3. When people show you detailed plans for your life that you never agreed to, believe them. They are telling you what they value more than you. Lesson 4. Document everything and keep your own foundation strong. Clear finances, separate accounts, written agreements. It may not feel romantic, but it protects you when emotions are used as tools. Lesson 5. Walking away from a bad deal is not fear of commitment. Sometimes it is the only way to protect your ability to commit to something real later. What about you? If your partner handed you a contract at your engagement dinner that made their ex a permanent part of your future, what would you have done? And have you ever been in a relationship where someone dressed up control or manipulation as growth or evolution? Share your thoughts in the comments.